Let's face it, Karine Jean-Pierre's press conferences are generally kind of disasters, but yesterday's was disaster times 10. And we've got so many low points to show you. It's hilarious. And what's the latest on the palace intrigue behind closed doors, pushing Joe Biden out? Is it finally Kamala's time to shine? Well, we're certainly unburdened by what has been, that's for sure. And we'll give you all the latest on that. And Scott Jennings telling some hard truths to the CNN panel. Anthony Fauci, of all people, comes out to tell you why Joe Biden's just fine, man. He's just fine. Yeah, Anthony Fauci is vouching for Joe Biden. We'll give you all of that and a whole lot more coming up right now. My name's Larry O'Connor. You can call me Larry. I am tempted to say that Karine Jean-Pierre's press conference yesterday. Oh, wait, before I get into that. Hi, happy Independence Day. Thanks for watching us. We're live right now at noontime on Wednesday, July 3rd. For those of you watching live on Rumble, engage in the chat room. We love seeing all of your encouragement and your witty remarks. And if you're watching on X or on Facebook or wherever you are live, hope you're having a good one. If you're watching us after the fact, please like and subscribe this video. Share it if you can, so you can help spread the word. And happy Independence Day. I want you to know that tomorrow on the 4th of July, we will be exercising our independence by not having a program. But we'll be right back on Friday. So make sure, because here's the thing. If you're like going to stop your life so you can watch this show at noon on the 4th of July, no, don't do that. Go out and enjoy time with your family and go watch 1776 or read the Declaration of Independence aloud or do something to celebrate our nation. And we'll be back on Friday. We'll see you then. Now, I'm tempted to call yesterday's press briefing from White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre a disaster. I could say, oh my gosh, it was the Hindenburg of press conferences. But no, it was much more than that. This was the Hindenburg combined with the Titanic, combined with 9/11, combined with Mount Vesuvius. This was monumental in its disaster-prone acumen. Here's Karine Jean-Pierre trying hard to say everything's fine here, and she kept saying the same thing over and over again. We'd like to turn the page on this. Oh, I bet you'd like to turn the page on this. Let's just turn the page on this one, shall we? Let's pretend it's all over.
I'm going to ask something delicate, and you may not like it. The president may not like to hear it if he's watching, but I think the American people need to get a yes or no answer on this. Does President Biden, at 81 years old, have Alzheimer's, any form of dementia, or degenerative illness that would cause these sorts of lapses? And it's a yes or no question. And if you don't know, why don't you, as one of his senior staff members, know?
I have an answer for you. Are you ready for it?
Yes.
It's a no. And I hope you're asking the other guy the same exact question.
The other guy, wait a minute, that's kind of a political campaigny kind of thing, isn't it? The other guy is merely running for president. He has no constitutional obligations or responsibilities to have a cognitive test or have the cognitive abilities to perform the job functions in front of him. Also, the other guy was standing right next to your guy, KJP, the other night, and we could all see for ourselves which one had it together and which one didn't have it together. Also, did you notice, the reporters are all getting a lot of kudos today based on their ability to ask the obvious question that they should have been asking for the last 3.5 years. Now, yes, we appreciate them finally jumping on board. Maybe they watched this show a little bit more recently. They should have been watching from the beginning, and they would have known that this obviously is an important issue. We're seeing clips surface from reporters asking about this during the campaign in 2020, and they were deflecting it. So this is nothing new. When he became president, they decided all to ignore it. They decided to collude. They decided to work together to suppress the facts and the truth from you. So I'm not going to bend over backwards giving them kudos for asking the one question now, finally, that they can no longer avoid asking. That said, did you hear how deferential the question was? I want to ask you this question, and I know it's going to hurt the president's feelings, and it may even hurt your feelings, and I know it's going to be uncomfortable for everybody, but I really feel like I got to ask this question. I mean, it has to be done. So here it goes. Take a deep breath. Everybody hold on tight. Buckle up your seatbelts. Does the president have brain damage? I don't remember them being that worried about the feelings of the president when it was 45. In fact, they were actually challenging. They were proclaiming that he had lost his cognitive abilities. They weren't even asking. They were just saying he's got to go. It's almost like the rules are different for a Republican and certainly for Donald Trump. All right, but we're just getting started. Now the lies and the spin begin. Now this is KJP at her absolute best and worst when she gets to lie.
Let me just step back for a minute and I guess deal with the questions that have come in about the debate. And honestly, this is something that the president has addressed himself multiple times since this past Thursday. And first of all, I want to say we understand the concerns. We get it. The president did not have a great night, as you all know, and many of you reached out during the debate. The president had a cold. He had a hoarse voice. You all heard it. That's why you reached out. But I will say this, and the president said this over the past couple of days, certainly right after the debate. He knows how to do the job. And he knows how to do the job, not because he says it, because his record proves it. Because for 3.5 years, almost 4 years, the president's record has been unprecedented.
The president's record has been unprecedented. That's actually a bit of a tongue twister that she does, looking in the bathroom mirror before she goes out on stage to make sure she's articulating properly. Sally sells seashells at the seashore. The president is unprecedented. Okay, a couple things here. First of all, obviously, they battle tested that line backstage in the briefing room ahead of time. Oh, what should we say? Oh, how about this? The president knows how to do the job. There, that's a good one. That'll get past him. You know, read between the lines. The president knows how to do the job. Okay. Is he capable of actually doing the job is the better question. I mean, I know how to hit a baseball, but I assure you that if I got, brought up by the Detroit Tigers to go play in a major league game, I would strike out. I know how to do it, but I'm not capable of doing it. Not at that level. I'm sure Joe Biden knows how to do the job of president. That's not the question. Is he capable of doing it? But I love the fact that they now want to go back on the records. Let's look at his record. Let's compare records. Yeah, we'd love to compare records. Instead, all we've heard from these people is, forget about his record. Trump is a danger to democracy. He's an authoritarian fascist, and he's going to shred the Constitution. Now they just want to talk about records. Yeah, we'd be happy to do that. But the lies continue. They just kept coming.
I guess I wondered if there's been any consideration given to releasing a more robust set of medical records or something to show his mental acuity.
So I will say this, look, and again, I get the question. It is a fair question to ask. We are not taking that away. And that's why the president certainly has spoken to this. As it relates to his medical records, we have been transparent. We have released thorough reports from his medical team every year since he's been in office. That is something that we have been pretty consistent about. As it relates to, something like a cognitive test, to the question that you're asking me about what the speaker, former speaker said. Obviously, she can speak for herself. His team, who has said, the medical team said it is not warranted in this case. We have put forward a thorough, transparent annual report on his health.
Yeah, so those are lies. Number one, there haven't been thorough releases of his medical records at all. We get a tertiary paragraph from his doctor, Kevin O'Connor, who never actually shows up and answers any direct questions or follow-up questions about the president's health and about the president's abilities and about his medical situation. Also, this whole thing, we've addressed this in the past and we've been fully transparent and completely cooperative with all the requests for the president to take a cognitive test. Oh, really? Because I don't know, maybe it's me, but I recall it coming up during the campaign. This reporter, you remember, from a local CBS news station asked specifically whether he would take a cognitive test. And how was candidate Biden's reaction at that time?
Please clarify specifically, have you taken a cognitive test?
No, I haven't taken a test. Why the hell would I take a test? Come on, man. That's like saying before you got in this program, if you take a test where you're taking cocaine or not, what do you think, huh? Are you a junkie?
What do you say to?
What a guy. Yeah, that's right. When challenged during the campaign in 2020 about whether he would take a cognitive test, he called the black reporter a junkie for asking. He was belligerent. He was angry. And then I'll look at the good old Uncle Joe smiley face there. Yeah, that's Joe Biden. That's how transparent and cooperative he's been in the past and how completely understanding he's been. I love Karine Jean-Pierre bending over backwards. We get it. That's a fair question to ask. Clearly, the decision was made to not gaslight even further and say, I can't believe you're even asking about this stuff. This is all just the result of cheap fakes from that right-winger Dana Bash. But you heard Karine Jean-Pierre there once again repeat the lie about the cold. The president had a cold. That's why he had a hoarse voice. He had a cold. It was a cold. It was a cold. Remember, yesterday we showed you hugging people and slobbering over people's plates of waffles at a Waffle House just an hour after the debate when he was supposedly suffering from a debilitating cold. He was hugging people. He was shaking their hands. He was grabbing food. Because he had a cold. So then a reporter said, yeah, about that cold.
You just reminded us that President Biden had a cold on Thursday. What medications was he taking in the days or hours leading up to the debate?
And I know that question has come in a couple of times to us. He was not taking any cold medication.
Was he taking any medication that would have interfered with his
He was not taking any cold medication. That is what I can speak to. I've asked his doctor, and that's what he stated to us.
That's priceless. Was he taking it? So he had a cold. Did he take any cold medication? He did not take any cold medication. Did he take any other medications before the debate? He did not take any cold medications. Next question. And by the way, this is a reporter actually bending over backwards to try to throw them a lifeline. Cold, that's it. That's it. So just say he took medications. That would explain his reaction. That would explain why he's acting that way. Just tell us it was medications, please. No, he was not on medications. Oh, God. Cold medications. Let's specifically cold medications. Was the president on any medications? Can you be more specific? Was he on cold medications? No. No, he was not on cold medications. Next question. One reporter did want to follow up and say, hold on. You seem to have left the door open a crack on the medications thing. Did I say crack?
Was there any other medication he had taken? That's what many of them are asking.
No, I understand. I was asked about the cold medicine. I asked about the cold medicine. He was not taking any cold medicine. And I don't have anything beyond that. I don't have anything beyond that to share. And look, I've answered this question multiple times at this point. I don't have anything else to add beyond what I have shared with your colleagues here in the room. We really, truly want to turn the page on.
Yeah, we are dying to turn the page on this. She is. Let me just be clear. So in case you missed it, I want to just be very specific and focus like a laser beam on what just transpired in this press briefing yesterday with Karine Jean-Pierre. She was asked multiple times, not about the cold medications. Put aside the cold medications. We understand the answer on the cold medications. No NyQuil, no Mucinex, no Sudafed. Great. Can you tell us if he was on any other drugs or anything else that could impair his abilities? No, I don't have anything for you on that. Wait, are you saying no, he's not on any other drugs or medications? No, I can't answer that question. I don't have any. That's the official line from the White House right now. These reporters theoretically are asking questions on your behalf, questions that occur to you as you see the president's behavior right in front of you. And I think a lot of us over the years have looked at him and said, my God, but is he on something? And the answer to the question is, yeah, that's nothing we can talk about. It's the president of the United States. All right. The Hindenburg continues to crash into the Titanic iceberg.
After the debate, did the president get examined by a doctor or did he get a neurological scan?
A neurological scan? Look, what I can say is that, just to take a step back, it was a bad night. We understand that it was a bad night. And the president has spoken to this. And he understands that. And so I cannot speak to anything beyond what I just shared. The president has regular annual physicals that we release in a thorough report. We're going to continue to do that. I don't have anything else beyond that.
So just again, when she says I don't have anything else, that's not a no. It's a I can't tell you, or they're purposely keeping me in the dark so I don't have to stand out here and lie. That's what that means. And the question is, after Thursday night, was the president examined by a medical professional? Did he get a brain scan? And we did not get a no on that. We didn't get a yes either. We got a, I don't have anything on that. I think that the actual answer is no. Why would he get a medical examination after that? That sort of thing, what you saw Thursday night, that happens all the time. That's just a daily occurrence. You kidding? He'd be seeing a doctor every day if we took him in when he behaved that way, because it, happens every day. All right. Now we're moving from the Hindenburg and Titanic into the 9/11 Mount Vesuvius area of the disaster.
Is anyone in the White House hiding information about the president's health or his ability to do the job day to day?
Absolutely not.
Is anyone in the
Now we got an absolutely not on that. Absolutely not. Nobody is hiding anything about the president's health. And yet, up until 5 days ago, all we heard from people inside the White House was Joe Biden is sharp as a tack. That's the line they all used. By the way, sharp as a tack, it's not a typical phrase, right? It's a very specific combination of words that not everybody uses. But suddenly, after the Robert Hur U.S. Attorney Special Counsel investigation into his illegal handling of classified documents, where the special counsel decided not to bring any charges against him because he didn't have the mental capabilities to stand trial, suddenly, within a 24-hour period, every single person who's ever had any interaction with Joe Biden as president over the last 3.5 years all decided to come out and let you know that he was sharp as a tack. And as Rush Limbaugh used to say, whenever they all use the same words, it's because talking points went out. Everybody got the talking points, and everyone was supposed to say the same thing. Sharp as a tack, sharp as a tack, sharp as a tack, he's sharp as a tack. So everybody says he's sharp as a tack. And then we see what happened on Thursday. And now we're to believe that nobody is hiding anything about the president's health. I think that it's fair for you to reach your own conclusions at this point.
Okay, well, you continue to say it was just a bad night, but is there an explanation then for why it was so bad? If it's not his stamina, if he prepared, as you guys say, for so long, if it's not a problem with his mental fitness, what happened that night? What did we see?
I will also add that the president also spoke to this as well. He said, I'm not as smooth as I used to be. I don't debate as well as I used to. I don't walk as easily as I used to. But one thing that he knows is how to deliver for the American people. He understands that. He understands that he's not a young man, obviously. He said this.
Now, this is an important moment in the press conference because this opens up a lot of questions. Because understand what Karine Jean-Pierre just decided to put on the record on behalf of the White House. It's true that Joe Biden said those things over the weekend, but it was in the context of a political rally for his campaign. Now it's part of the presidential record. Karine Jean-Pierre is saying that the president does not speak as well as he used to. He does not walk as well as he used to, that he is much older than he used to be. And of course, that shows its signs. This now allows for a whole new line of questioning. about the obvious deterioration of the president because she just confirmed it. They think that this is a clever political talking point, and it may be in the context of a campaign. It may engender sympathy. It may make voters think, oh, yeah, just like my dad, just like me, I'm not as spry as I was a few years ago, but I feel like I still got it up here. I still can fight with the best of them, right? That's a political message. Now you're officially saying, on behalf of the White House, standing in the White House with the White House emblem behind you, that the president of the United States does not speak as well as he did a year ago, 2 years ago. And so now the questions need to start coming about exactly what is going on. Why? Is it just old age, or is there something else happening? And again, this much credit to the reporters for actually picking up on that cue and asking those questions.
Pelosi said it's a legitimate question to ask if this is an episode or is this is a condition. Which one is it?
Well, what I can tell you is that
I've been letting these clips run through, but I had to pause right there because I want you to see what just happened. The question about the president's deterioration is this an episode? And it's like a one-off, or is this a condition? And before Karine Jean-Pierre could answer that question, she had to open up her book. She had to flip to the right page. She had to consult the approved notes. Now, if you're asked that question about yourself or a family member or someone you work for, would you need to consult the official record? Would you have to consult the pre-approved notes and talking points? You wouldn't think so. You would think that that would be a pretty simple thing to answer. So watch it again. Watch Karine Jean-Pierre as the question is being asked, and watch her not so subtly move to that cross tab to answer this question.
This is a condition. Which one is it?
Well, what I can tell you is that he had a cold and a bad night. I would not see this as an episode. I would see this as what it was and what we believe it to be, which is it was a bad night. And he did, on top of that, he had a cold. And that is the reality of the situation. That is the reality of what happened that night.
They keep saying he had a bad night. He had a bad night, like, he wasn't prepared for the questions, even though we think he got the questions ahead of time. He had a bad night because he couldn't remember the answers, and that happens to the best of us, right? He had a bad night because he was tired from all of his travel. We'll get to that a little later. He had a bad night. Like, it's just, listen, he's off his game sometimes, and he just, didn't have a great grasp of the facts. He had a bad night. He had a bad night. But, when you hear her repeat it over and over and over again, you start to get a different impression of what they mean by he had a bad night. So you can say all of the context that I just gave you on he had a bad night, and it would work, right? Even Barack Obama said, hey, I had a bad debate night that one time, my first debate with Mitt Romney, and he's right. He did have a bad debate that first time. You don't prepare right. You don't know what your opponent is going to bring to the table. You don't know what the settings, all that stuff, right? Bad night. Let me give you another example of what they mean by he had a bad night. How about this? Well, you know how it is with Joe. He has his good nights and he has his bad nights. And this was one of the bad nights. This is how you talk about somebody who has a deteriorating physical disability. When they have a condition that is getting worse and worse and worse. Hey, how was Joe last night? He had a bad night. Right? And one reporter, after hearing this string of responses from Karine Jean-Pierre that began with she herself saying, he does not talk as well as he used to. He does not walk as well as he used to. One reporter, James Rosen, senior White House correspondent for Newsmax, started putting the pieces together. He was not called upon, but he did shout a question from the back of the room. The question that, based on everything Karine Jean-Pierre just said, seems to be pretty reasonable. Is the President of the United States disabled?
Is he disabled?
One more. No, and let me finish with your colleague, please. And I know, but shouting out, come on, you know better. You know better. Come on.
You know better. That's an obvious question to ask. In fact, I interviewed James Rosen this morning on my radio show in Washington, D.C. Go check out that podcast if you want. Because I asked him, what made you ask that? And he said, well, I'm sitting there listening to these answers. He doesn't walk as well as he used to. He doesn't talk as well as he used to. He had a bad night. It's like he sounds like he's got a condition and he's suffering from a disability, a deteriorating disability. So I asked, is he disabled? Watch the reaction again.
Is he disabled?
One more. No, and let me finish with your colleague, please. And I know, but shouting out, come on, you know better. You know better. Come on.
You know better. Here's the thing about James Rosen. The only way he gets a question asked is by shouting out for two reasons. Number one, he works for Newsmax. And number two, at a press conference for the president back in 2022, one of the few press conferences Joe Biden has agreed to, James Rosen asked a question based on a poll that showed that 50% of Americans think that he doesn't have the mental capabilities of fulfilling the job. And the question he asked the president was, why do you think people believe that? And ever since he asked that question, he's been shunned by the White House press secretary, first Jen Psaki and now Karine Jean-Pierre. So when she says, you know better, what she's saying, she isn't saying you shouldn't shout questions, because she responds to people who shout questions all the time. No, what she's saying is, James, we don't talk to you anymore. You know better.
This year, the president has done more than 40 interviews and unscripted, right? Those interviews are unscripted. He has done more than 500 gaggles, right? Of course, unscripted, talking directly to many of you. No, let me just finish.
The reason a reporter was trying to interrupt her was to point out that she's lying. 40 unscripted interviews. First of all, he hasn't done that many interviews, number one, and they're not unscripted. In fact, we know for a fact, based on seeing the little cards he's got in his hand, that he's told who to call on and what the questions and answers are going to be in advance. And these gaggles, you know what they mean by a gaggle? It means when he's walking to the helicopter on the South Lawn, someone shouts a question at him, he turns, squints at him, sort of gives the squat like he's filling his adult diaper, and then he'll maybe shout an answer back. That's a gaggle. He's supposed to get credit for that. All right, continue.
And so he enjoys doing that. He enjoys engaging with all of you. And we're going to continue making sure that happens.
Here's the funny thing about this. I've been around for a while, and I've seen presidents who have a bad night and have a bad news cycle, and they're in trouble. And the funny thing is, if they want to clean up the mess and they want to do something about that, and actually, especially when it comes to whether they've lost it or not, you know what they do? You know what those presidents do? They stand at that podium. They come in and they handle the briefing with the reporters. They go right in there and take command. There's plenty of images of Barack Obama at that podium, Bill Clinton at that podium, George Bush at that podium. Ronald Reagan took that podium sometimes. You ever seen Joe Biden in that room? You ever seen him engaging with reporters like that? See, if you're Joe Biden and you want to prove to the world through the White House press corps that you have all your faculties and there's no question that you're prepared to do 5 more years in that office, wouldn't you go out there and engage with reporters? Of course you would. Instead, what have they done? They've scheduled a one-on-one private exclusive interview with George Stephanopoulos, who is not a television host and not a reporter and not a journalist. He's a political hack for the Democrats who got his claim to fame by killing bimbo eruptions for Bill Clinton. His job in the Clinton campaign back in 1992 was to bully and intimidate reporters from telling the truth about Bill Clinton and women. His whole career before he went to ABC News and since he's been at ABC News has to run interference for Democrats. And now he's going to pre-record an interview with Joe Biden, and they'll edit it however they want it to appear. If they want to help Joe Biden, they'll edit that thing to make Joe Biden look good. But if they end up helping the party by putting the final nail in Joe Biden's career so that they can pave the way for his replacement, then they'll edit that interview and make him look bad. I guess the point is, if you really want to show us the truth, there will be no editing at all. Just turn on the mics, turn on the cameras, and let all of us ask questions, not just your hand-picked guy, George Stephanopoulos. More from Karine Jean-Pierre, because she was finally challenged on the thing that we've been waiting for. Just a week ago, you were declaring cheap fakes, video manipulation, dastardly lies from conservative media just to make Joe Biden look bad. And it was all lies, and it was all phony, and it was all fake news. Do you regret doing that now? You can guess what her answer is.
The administration strongly criticized the media for clips showing the president appearing to be confused, freezing at times, and you called it cheap fakes, misinformation, disinformation. In one case, even implied that it was the product of artificial intelligence, calling it deep fakes. Do you have any regret over using that language?
Not at all. Not at all. And let me be clear, it was a certain part of the media. And, I mean, you can speak to this better than I can. A certain part of the media which was doing this.
I'm going to let you finish there, KJP, but I just need to give you some context. That question was coming from Jackie Heinrich. She's from Fox News. And what Karine Jean-Pierre there is saying is, hey, we weren't criticizing the media. We were criticizing you and conservative media. And that's okay. We're allowed to lie about you. Funny thing, though, about those cheap fakes videos, you know, the one of him standing frozen at the Juneteenth concert that we showed you a few times here to point out that there's something physically and mentally wrong with the president of the United States. That's one of the videos that Karine Jean-Pierre said was a lie. And now she's celebrating it, has no apologies, and sort of flexing because it's okay. I can do that. You guys are conservatives. Yeah, that video in particular was cited this morning by the New York Times as one of the examples and evidence that we've seen that Joe Biden has lost it. Guys, you know, the New York Times, they're conservative media.
And look, independent mainstream fact checkers in the press and misinformation experts have been calling out cheap fakes. And at the end of the day, they're fakes. That's what they were, targeting the president. They had said, the reporters and these misinformation experts said that this president was being targeted. And what we did was echo them. That's what we did. And look, we'll certainly continue to call that out. And the cheap fakes didn't come from me. I didn't coin that. That didn't come from this White House or this podium. That came from the media. They called it cheap fakes. And they said this president, President Biden, was being targeted on misinformation. It was purposefully being done to this president. And what we did is we echoed that. So I don't regret it at all. It was just
the audaciousness of that. Hey, cheap fakes didn't come from me or this podium. It came from the media, you know, like NBC News and their star, Jen Psaki, who, well, up until about a year and a half ago, actually worked at this podium. Or from ABC News and George Stephanopoulos, who, well, back in the 90s, actually worked from the same podium. All right. Well, maybe it came from other people in the media, people who didn't work in the White House, you know, like Chuck Todd and Jake Tapper. They didn't work at this podium. They worked on Capitol Hill for Democrats. But you know what I mean. They came from the media, not from Democrat operatives. It came from the media. The media are Democrat operatives. Let's flip to CNN and see their assessment of Karine Jean-Pierre's nightmare of a press conference, shall we?
Well, the motivation behind that press conference was clear because Karine Jean-Pierre said it plainly. We want to turn the page. We want America to turn the page. We are hoping to turn the page. I mean, she said it 3 times. That was quite clear. The page is not turning because there was a lack of answers to the critical fundamental question that was being asked, which is, what happened? What happened that all of America saw? So Karine Jean-Pierre kept saying, we're not trying to ignore reality. We understand and acknowledge what America saw and witnessed, and that was a really bad night, and that was a bad debate. And we acknowledge that. But she does not offer one bit of evidence or reasoning or rationale for why. Why did America see what they saw that night. And there were a lot of questions asked by the White House press corps. Can we get more medical records? Can you bring the doctor in here and make them available? Is it time to do a cognitive test? You didn't do one in the last. And there was just none acceptance of that kind of a premise. It was just one bad night. We acknowledge that. But she's missing explaining to the country fundamentally why.
Yeah. When you've lost CNN, it's over. And it is over. We're just watching it all play out. And what a time to be alive, and what a time to follow news and politics the way we do right here at Town Hall and on this show. You're going to have to stay with us throughout this entire thing, because in the next few days, the next couple of weeks leading up to the Democratic National Convention in August, we are witnessing history unfold. And it's incredibly consequential. And over at the White House, they've got a press secretary who wants to continue to lie at you and gaslight you and pretend that everything's just fine. Let's turn the page. And, well, the page is being turned. All right. And Joe Biden is on the backside of that page. Hey, can your savings weather an economic storm? Think about what you put away for the future. You know that inflation can render cash useless, absolutely worthless. Real estate can crash, just like it did in 2008. A lot of people looking at the indications now that we might have another real estate crash. In economies built on a mountain of debt can fall like a house of cards. There are very few physical assets, like I just named, that you can invest in that can stand the test of time. Gold, however, well, gold has withstood as a valued form of money for millennia. It's why people are flocking to it now, and why Birch Gold is busier than ever. They've got a little-known tax loophole that Birch Gold allows you to convert a retirement account into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold. That's right. Your IRA can actually be an investment in physical gold. And the best part is it doesn't cost you a penny out of pocket. If you want to learn more about this, and I bet you do, why don't you text my name, Larry, to 989898. That's LARRY to 989898 and get a free info kit on gold. Trust the people call the people I trust. Gold. Text Larry 989898 and secure your savings today. The dam is breaking. The walls are closing in. The train is running off the tracks. It's the nightmare scenario. Joe Biden is finished. And, well, let's just say she's ready. That is an actual non-manipulated picture of the current state of our country, or at least of the executive branch of our government. That's where we are. And the latest comes from the New York Times. It broke just about an hour and a half ago, where apparently Joe Biden is privately telling his advisors and confidants that he is going through the decision-making process right now as to whether he will continue.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Breaking news, CNN has learned President Biden has privately acknowledged a series of critical tests are ahead in the next stretch of days. Those tests essential to determining whether he can stay in the race for the White House. CNN White House correspondent MJ Lee joining us now. MJ, what more are you learning?
Erica, what I'm learning, and this is according to an ally of the president's who spoke with the president directly yesterday, is that the president has privately acknowledged that the next stretch of days are going to be so critical to the question of whether he can save his reelection campaign. The president, made clear to this ally in this conversation yesterday that he understands what circumstances would prompt him to basically accept it's just not working. This person who spoke to the president telling me that he sees the moment, he is clear-eyed, and they said that the president is very clear on the series of potential events that could come in the coming days that would prompt him again to accept that what he's trying to do to turn the narrative, turn his campaign around, isn't working. This person said, quote, the polls are plummeting, the fundraising is drying up, and the interviews are going badly. He's not oblivious. This is, of course, the person paraphrasing the conversation that they had with the president yesterday. As you know, this is a really significant window into how the president is is going to be handling the next important stretch for his campaign. His campaign is in an existential crisis right now ever since that terrible debate performance last week, and he is under tremendous amount of pressure right now. From Democratic Party leaders, from donors, voters who have said last week really demonstrated that he is not up for running for re-election or even finishing out the term.
We'll let this report finish in a moment, but I just want to point out a beautiful piece of irony. Look at the chyron there. Biden tells ally coming days crucial to deciding if he stays in the race. Imagine being Joe Biden and having a small handful of close confidants, allies that you would share something that personal and that private with, and knowing that one of them immediately ran to the New York Times and CNN to tell them. Also, follow-up question, observation, maybe not connected to the first one. Do you think Kamala Harris was one of those close allies that Joe Biden confided in? Or Gretchen Whitmer or Gavin Newsom? Yeah, the knives are out all right, big time.
Now, interestingly, I'm also told that in this private conversation yesterday, the president was also chastened and blamed himself, not his staff, for his poor debate performance. He said, I have done too much foreign policy, according to this ally that I spoke with. And he acknowledged that the back-to-back foreign trips that he had leading up to Thursday night's debate had been a mistake. We, of course, heard the president saying that at a fundraiser last night as well. The jet lag and the exhaustion heading into Thursday night just had not been a good idea, the president told this ally. Of course, all of this is just so crucial. And again, just a really important insight into how the president is trying to fix the situation that may or may not be able to be fixed. And I think the White House is denying the New York Times' reporting that the president is acknowledging that he may not be able to salvage his campaign. I mean, the reporting that we have right here goes right up to the line. If the president is telling an ally in a private conversation that he knows what it will look like if his attempt to save his campaign isn't working, there is a bit of a suggestion there that he knows that there is, of course, a scenario where he isn't able to save his bid for a second term. So again, a private conversation that gives us some new insight into how the president is trying to handle the next couple of days and the coming weeks. Of course, we know from the White House that they are trying to put a lot more on his schedule to try to show the president in more unscripted settings, like the extended interview that he is going to do on Friday with ABC News. He is going to be getting out there into the country a little bit more. But the big question for the party and for a lot of nervous Democrats that are watching right now is whether any of those things will be enough.
Yeah, thank you to Media Research Center for that clip. A pretty stunning development there. Again, that was earlier this morning. The president acknowledging to allies that this may be the time, and he's being the decision-making process. In fact, here's the New York Times headline for you, so you can see exactly what we're talking about. Biden told ally whether he was weighing whether to continue the race. The president's conversation is the first indication that he is seriously considering whether he can recover after a devastating performance on the debate stage in Atlanta on Thursday. Private conversations that immediately get leaked to the New York Times and the CNN. Why would they get leaked? Because even the people he confides in want this thing to roll. Even the people he is confiding in want the media narrative to build and build and build. That means his close people who are on his side, who want him to stay, is dwindling even tighter. One of the people he trusted enough to share this information with wants him out. And Joe Biden doesn't even know it. He doesn't even know that the person he confided in is actually working to get him out. Why else would you leak this? Why else? One other thing is you see discussions. You're about to see a bunch of Democrats who are sort of starting to thread that needle, starting to walk down that line and say, yeah, maybe it's time. Or they're speculating, well, if he does decide to go, here's what we'll do. You know, if you even engage in that speculation, it means that you're kind of pushing this along. I want you to notice one thing as we continue to see these clips I'm about to show you. First, just as a visual aid, that's where we're headed. And secondly, recognize that every single thing that you're hearing is a political calculation on November, right? Even this, weighing whether to continue in the race, whether he can recover from the devastating performance. All of it has to do with whether he can pull it together to stay on the ticket to beat Donald Trump. Nowhere from the New York Times, from CNN, and the reporter you just heard, from Kamala Harris, from you're about to see Nancy Pelosi, Jamie Raskin, James Clyburn. None of them ask the one fundamental question, the only question that should be asked right now. What is in the best interest of the United States of America? All of this is a political calculation about Donald Trump and November. All of this is a political calculation about retaining power and holding on to the White House, keeping the Justice Department and the FBI and the CIA and the military under our control. That's what this is all about. Nowhere along the line, and by the way, none of the reporters interviewing Nancy Pelosi and James Clyburn and Jamie Raskin, none of them say, but wait a minute, sir, excuse me, madam, what about the Constitution? What about the safety and security of the United States of America? What about having a competent man who can be our commander-in-chief as we face foreign enemies, terrorists, Russia, China, people who will do us harm, all the people that the president's son does business with, those guys. If he's incapable of being on the ticket and running for office, then how in the is he able to run the country? But all of it is about whether he stays as a candidate, not about whether he keeps his job, which is kind of critical. And again, nobody asked the question, what's in the best interest of our country, our military, our functioning government, and the people of the United States of America? Why don't they ask that question? Well, because it doesn't occur to them. You're an afterthought. You're a means to an end. So the first Democrat to step out was Representative Lloyd Doggett of Texas, Democrat, Austin, Texas, to be exact. So it's not the same thing as being a Texan. He called on the president to withdraw from the race, quoting, having devoted his life to public service, President Biden has achieved much for our country at home and abroad, stepping up to lead a nation in crisis. President Biden, yeah, blah, 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 blah. Moving on. I represent the heart of a congressional district once represented by Lyndon Johnson. Under very different circumstances, he made the painful decision to withdraw. President Biden should do the same. While much of his work has been transformational, he pledged to be transitional. He has the opportunity to encourage a new generation of leaders from whom a nominee can be chosen to unite our country through an open democratic process. Wait a second. An open democratic process. You know the process, right? The process, if it's not this one as the obvious successor, then the process is we go to Chicago and for a week, a few hundred, maybe a couple thousand people get together in a smoky room and they decide who's going to run for president, which is how they used to do it in the old days, which is fine if you want that party power to be able to make those decisions. But please don't tell me that it's a, how did he put it? Open democratic process. I mean, that's absolute bull. It's not an open democratic process. You know what an open democratic process is? The voters in a primary go and vote for the candidates and the winner becomes the nominee. That's what the Democrats just did. The winner was Joe Biden. Oh, but that was fixed. They didn't have any debates. They didn't even allow RFK to be on the ballot. They didn't even allow New Hampshire to go first. They discounted. Yeah, you're right. It was fixed. That's what Democrats do. Thanks for figuring it out. Nancy Pelosi asked about her colleague, the Democrat here, Congressman Doggett, and about whether other Democrats are starting to crack.
So we have all these things that he was masterful in helping to orchestrate, to write, and to pass. So he has a vision, he has knowledge, he has judgment, he has a strategic thinking, and the rest. He has a bad night. Now, again, I think it's a legitimate question to say, is this an episode or is this a condition? So we.
All right. Listen, Nancy Pelosi is still trying to lay it out there about all the great things Joe Biden has, but she opens the door a little crack. It is legitimate to ask whether it's an episode or a condition. But all those things he has judgment, he has experience, he has mashed potato for brains. And we all know it and we all see it, and we've seen it for years. And Nancy Pelosi's leadership here and inspiration fell on deaf ears, and some of them were deaf ears, including the ears of Congresswoman Marie Gluesenkamp-Perez. She's a Democrat, and she has bailed on Biden as well.
Last month's debate, which, as we all know, did not go well for him. Do you think the president should remain in the race, or should he step down?
Yeah, about 50 million Americans tuned in and watched that debate. I was one of them for about 5 very painful minutes. And we all saw what we saw. You can't undo that. And, the truth, I think, is that Biden is going to lose to Trump. I know that's difficult, but I think the damage has been done by that debate.
Should he step down then now, do you believe, or stay in that race?
Well, a core tenet of democracy is that you accept the results of an election. And the reality is, primary voting has already happened to a degree that Biden is the nominee.
That's a ringing endorsement. She only watched for 5 minutes, by the way. Oh, honey, you should have kept watching. It got way worse. And understand, did you see what I was telling you? This is all about, what do you think of the president's situation? What do you think his capabilities are? What should happen? And the answer is, I think he's going to lose to Donald Trump. How about the men and women in our military who are in harm's way that he can command to go into battle? Don't they deserve something better? That is important, but it's not as important as beating Donald Trump. James Clyburn, you could argue, probably one of the most influential politicians in the Democrat Party to get Joe Biden the nomination when he needed it most. He had lost Iowa, he had lost New Hampshire, but James Clyburn delivered South Carolina for Joe Biden. It was at that point where Barack Obama and the party elders decided we can't let Bernie Sanders be our nominee. He's too dangerous. So we're going to have to coalesce around Joe Biden. He's the only one who can beat Donald Trump. As someone in the room during that meeting said, but what about Pete Buttigieg? He could win. At that point, Barack Obama turned and said, shut up, Pete. So they coalesced around Joe Biden because of James Clyburn delivering South Carolina, and Congressman Clyburn had one demand. We give you the White House. You have to pick a black woman as your running mate. It's exactly what happened. You may not remember, it was 4 years ago, but check the record. That's what happened. That's how we ended up with Kamala Harris. Joe Biden pledged to nominate a black woman as vice president. Not a qualified person, not a smart person even. Nope, just a black woman. And, well, that's what we got. So where does James Clyburn stand?
Congressman, how would you feel if there is a decision for him to step down, if he decides that, and he has to decide that? Or if the party pressures him to do that, how would you feel if they worked around and tried to go around Kamala Harris because of her lack of high poll numbers and popularity and broadly based? Do you think it's hers to have if it is not his?
I will support her if he were to step aside. But I want to support her going forward at some time in the future. I want this ticket to continue to be Biden-Harris. And then we'll see what happens after the next election.
Yeah, but you can't unring that bell, pal. He should have never said what he just said, which is, I will support her if he steps aside. Everything else he says here as he's trying to clean up that mess. But I don't think that should happen now. I think that we should stick with the ticket we got, and I'll support Joe, and Joe should be the nominee, and Joe's going to win. And no. We stopped listening. We stopped listening after James Clyburn said, I'll support Kamala if Joe steps aside. That's all we need to hear. That's all Democrats need to hear. Jamie Raskin. Jamie Raskin is a Democrat from Maryland. You may recognize him because he is the tip of the spear on all the anti-Trump lawfare coming out of the House. He was the impeachment manager against Donald Trump. He is the ranking member on judiciary, trying to stand in the way of Jim Jordan getting to the bottom of the Hunter Biden laptop and other Biden family crimes. He is critically important to protecting Joe Biden. What does he say?
Do you agree with Congressman Doggett?
Well, look, you know, we are the party of democracy and freedom right now, and everybody is asking one question within the Democratic Party. And I know that's true of President Biden and Vice President Harris and my friend Lloyd Doggett and everybody in the House and the Senate and all of the members of the Democratic Party, the tens of millions of people across the country, which is how do we defeat Donald Trump and how are we going to defeat the threat of authoritarianism and keep the progress of democracy and freedom moving forward in the country. And we are not operating like an authoritarian religious cult the way that the Republican Party operates now. There will be lots of discussion and lots of people weighing in. And I know this is a moving target. It's got to happen quickly. But I can guarantee you, Chris Hayes, there will be massive unity and focus on that task when we get to the end of this process. And it's happening very quickly.
All right. So let me translate a ton of that for you, if I could. Joe is done. Now we just have to decide who it's going to be to replace him. It's going to get ugly, but we will all unify behind whoever it is because Donald Trump is the real enemy here. Now that I've translated it for you, let's point out the irony of all of the things Jamie Raskin said about Democrats and about you. Let's start with this.
You know, we are the party of democracy and freedom right now. And
we're the party of democracy and freedom. And now let me explain to you how a small handful of us are going to decide who the next president is, despite what the voters in our own party have just said over the last year in the primaries. But we're the party of democracy, right? And then he went on to say what then about Republicans?
And all of the members of the Democratic Party, the tens of millions of people across the country, which is how do we defeat Donald Trump and how are we going to defeat the threat of authoritarianism and keep the progress of democracy and freedom moving forward in the country.
How are we going to get together in a little room and decide who our nominee is going to be and thwart the will of the voters of the Democrat Party during the primaries so that we can stop authoritarianism? How can we exercise our own authoritarianism so we can stop authoritarianism? Is exactly what he just said.
And we are not operating like an authoritarian religious cult the way that the Republican Party operates now. There will be lots of discussion and lots of people weighing in.
So all of you, the majority of the American people, based on all of the polls for the last several months, if you dare to say that Donald Trump is your choice for president, you're actually part of an authoritarian religious cult. Remember when we were told that our country needed to be unified? We needed to come together. We needed to stop being so angry at each other. It was Joe Biden, I think, that said that, wasn't it? Maybe he was having a bad night. That was one of the bad nights when he said things like that. And so they're not a religious cult, Jamie Raskin says. But he also, at the same time, promises you that.
And I know this is a moving target. It's got to happen quickly. But I can guarantee you, Chris Hayes, there will be massive unity and focus on that task when
we are not a religious cult. I don't know who our nominee is, but I guarantee you we'll all be unified behind them. I don't know. That sounds sort of culty to me. They are a cult. But unlike other cults that are all about, you know, promoting one person or one idea blindly and slavishly, they're not for something. Their cult is about being against something. Against you and Donald Trump. If you want to look at the polls, you can look at the polls, but they're not good on the national level. I think that Joe Biden has dropped close to 3 points since the debate. On a state-by-state basis, if they held the election today, he would lose Virginia. He would lose New Mexico. He would lose New Hampshire. These are states that have not gone for a Republican in a very, very long time. But Joe Biden would lose those states if the election were held today. And I'm told by many people who engage and observe these things that more important than the polls You should look at the betting books that allow you to bet the futures on a political candidate. And as of now, Kamala Harris, of all the potential Democrat nominees, Kamala Harris is the clear favorite over Joe Biden even. That's where we stand right now. Terrifying, isn't it? Absolutely terrifying. Let's have Karine Jean-Pierre give us one final word on all of this, because one thing we can be assured of is that this whole scene playing out since Thursday does call into question the succession per the Constitution, who the next president would be, who her running mate might be if she becomes the president. All of these things are in play, whether he stays in office and she becomes the nominee and runs as the vice president. It's a lot of moving parts. You would think that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will have discussed it over the last 5 days. You would think that.
Has the president had a chance to speak one-on-one with Vice President Harris since the debate?
I can't speak to any conversations that they've had, and so I'll just leave it at that. I don't have any readout of a conversation between the two of them.
Yeah, they haven't talked because they hate each other. It goes all the way back to the primaries when Kamala Harris called Joe Biden a racist. Yet we're told on the schedule today they did have lunch. That's nice. I wonder what they talked about, don't you? So Joe Biden is clearly suffering some sort of mental or medical dilemma. So CBS News wanted to get to the bottom of it. They brought in an expert, not just an expert on someone who's interacted with Joe Biden, but also he happens to be a medical expert. And when has he ever been wrong? You betcha. I'm talking about Tony Fauci.
It just looked like a bad night because my interaction with him was what I described in the book, and what happened even subsequent to what I described in the book after I got out. He's very probing in his questions, very analytical, very calm about things. When you go in to brief him, Major, you better really know your topic, because he's going to ask you very relevant questions. And he's very reflective on things and just doesn't jump out with conclusions or anything, but is very analytic. So my interactions with him, I have to say, have been very, very positive.
Did you see the debate?
I did.
Did anything about that, what you saw, medically alarm you?
I can't say. I think it would be inappropriate to say that, Major, because when you're just looking at someone on a one-shot basis, you just don't know what could happen. Did he have a bad cold? Did he take an antihistamine to make him, groggy or what have you? We don't know what went on. And I think it would be unfair and inappropriate to try and diagnose something from just a 90-minute clip.
A couple of things here. First of all, I love the fact, hey, every interaction I had with him, he was on the ball. He was great. He asked really important questions. He said, yeah, you know why? Because he agreed with you. He deferred to you. When he was running for office, Joe Biden literally said that he was going to let you have your way and run roughshod over everything with regard to pandemic policy. So, of course, you're happy with your interactions with him. He didn't challenge you. He didn't say, wait a minute, no, you can't do that. The Constitution will prevent it. So, yeah, great. Good to know that Tony Fauci thinks Joe Biden is Johnny on the spot and on the ball. But then the whole thing with the guy, hey, he could have been on a cold medicine, right? That could have affected him like that. Maybe, but we'll remind you, Karine Jean-Pierre was specifically asked about that.
You just reminded us that President Biden had a cold on Thursday. What medications was he taking in the days or hours leading up to the debate?
And I know that question has come in a couple of times to us. He was not taking any cold medication.
Was he taking any medication that would have interfered with his
He was not taking any cold medication. That is what I can speak to.
That never gets old. Was he taking any cold medication? No, he was not taking any cold medication. Well, was he taking any other medication? He was not taking any cold medication. Next question, please. Anyone? Anyone. Not you, James Rosen. Anyone else? Yeah, the last thing that Fauci said there, which I think is important. very important to point out when he was asked, did you see anything as a medical professional that caused you any concern? And it's shocking, actually, that he said, yeah, he really should have been wearing a mask since he was so close to Donald Trump. He didn't say that. But he said it would be inappropriate, right? That's what he kept saying. It would be inappropriate for me to say anything. Let me tell you something. If Anthony Fauci's expert opinion in watching Joe Biden for 90 minutes, if his conclusion was that Joe Biden looks just fine and there's nothing wrong, he would say that. You see, that wouldn't be inappropriate, would it? Would his answer be, inappropriate? I shouldn't say anything. If Anthony Fauci thought Joe Biden looked great, why would it be inappropriate for Anthony Fauci to say, I think Joe Biden looked great? If Anthony Fauci didn't detect anything on that stage in Joe Biden's behavior that was an indication of a medical problem, then why would it be inappropriate for him to say, I don't see anything that indicates a medical problem? It wouldn't be inappropriate. The only thing that's inappropriate is for him to say, yeah, there's something wrong. See, that would be inappropriate. And that's why he didn't say it. But we've got the cold medicine. We've got the, bad night. We've got all of these other explanations. And then while Karine Jean-Pierre was out there giving all these talking points, he had a bad night. Let's turn the page. No, it wasn't cold medicine. I can't talk about any other medicine. Let's just move on. While she was blithering on with that, unbeknownst to her, an hour and a half later, Joe Biden at a fundraiser in Northern Virginia actually delivered a brand new excuse, which I bet she would have loved to have had at her press briefing. Here's the brand new excuse.
The New York Times this morning is taking a look at President Biden in the weeks and months before his debate performance. The paper reports, quote, Mr. Biden was drained enough from the back-to-back trips to Europe that his team cut his planned debate preparation by 2 days so he could rest at his house. In the weeks and months leading up to the debate, several current and former officials and others who encountered him behind closed doors noticed he increasingly appeared confused or listless or would lose the thread of conversations. This is all from the New York Times. The paper continues, quote, like many people his age, Mr. Biden, 81, has long experienced instances in which he mangled a sentence, forgot a name, or mixed up a few facts, even though he could be sharp and engaged most of the time. But in interviews, people in the room with him more recently said the lapses seem to be growing more frequent, more pronounced, and more worrisome. The Times notes the occurrences, quote, seem more likely when he was in a large crowd or tired after a particularly bruising schedule.
That's it. They're trying to point to this bruising schedule of his, that he was just worn out because of all of his travel. Now, again, Karine Jean-Pierre, hearing about this late last night after her press briefing has got to be like, well, it would have been nice for them to give that one to me. I could have used that one when I was lying at the briefing. More lies, the better, guys. If Joe Biden at this fundraiser last night said, yeah, I was really tired. I was traveling too much, going back and forth to Europe. That's what took it out of me. If he says that to the big money donors at the fundraiser, why didn't he say it to his own press secretary? Well, it's because it's a lie. He's just coming up and saying whatever he has to cover his butt. They continued this morning on MSNBC. This is a spokesperson for the campaign.
He did not have his best night. He said at a fundraiser last night in McLean, Virginia, that he was tired. You've noted on this show, Mika, many times that, he traveled twice around the world. He was exhausted. He did not have his best night.
He didn't have his best night. He didn't have anybody's best night. So let's unpack this a little bit, as we like to do, so we can point out all of the lies. He did not travel around the world twice. He traveled from Washington, D.C. to Italy, Washington, D.C. to France. All right. Now, it's not nothing, but those are like 8-hour flights. Okay. Number one. Number two, and again, not around the world. It's across the Atlantic twice. Okay. Number two, he's got a private plane. He has got a little bit more than a private plane. He's got the greatest private jet on the planet. He's got Air Force One that has a king-size bed in it. You know, flying to Europe back and forth over the course of 2 weeks, I guess can be rough if you're flying coach and you have to, sit upright the whole time. There's a reason why you pay a little extra for business class or first class, right? They even have the lay-down beds now. You feel pretty refreshed the next day. Imagine having a private room with a king-size bed in it, okay? So don't give me this, he traveled back and forth. By the way, she left something out. At the fundraiser in McLean, Virginia, that they're referencing, where Biden claimed that it was his travel schedule that took so much out of him, he also claimed that he almost fell asleep on the debate stage. He almost fell asleep standing up while engaging in a presidential debate with television cameras and lights all around. I've been really tired in my lifetime. I mean, super tired, right? And you say, I'm dead on my feet. I could fall asleep standing up. But I assure you, I could pull 2 all-nighters and be up for 48 hours, and I would not be in danger of falling asleep standing up at a podium during a live television debate. But Joe Biden said he almost fell asleep during the debate. And then there's this. Yes, Joe Biden went to Europe twice in the span of like 7 or 10 days for the G7 thing and then for the Normandy thing, right? But then when he came back, he had over a full week of rest and recuperation at Camp David. That's after, by the way, spending a couple of days at the beach. Then he goes to Camp David and he's sequestered. You didn't see him for an entire week. We had like an attempted coup in, I believe, an African nation, or was it an Asian nation? I'm not sure. We had murders at the hands of illegal immigrants in this country, including one right here in the DC area. We had international incidents, and Joe Biden never once emerged from his hole at Camp David to give a public statement. He was that sequestered. He got to rest, recuperate, and prepare at Camp David for an entire week after the travel. And he was still dead on his feet, tired, so much so that he was going to fall asleep on the debate stage. That's their excuse now? That's what they're going with? The cold thing isn't working. Oh, and you heard the report. He had to skip 2 days of preparation so that he could rest. This included, by the way, daily afternoon naps at Camp David during his prep time. So now he's missed 2 days of prep time so he could rest and recuperate from his trip to Europe, and he had to take afternoon naps, which suggests he was not prepared for the debate. But do you remember 2 days ago, one of the excuses that was floated was that he was over-prepared? You know, the reason Joe Biden looked like this, sometimes this happens. You get over-prepared. This man is like a supercomputer in his head, and he's got so much facts and data in there that sometimes it's hard to process it all and get it out in just a 2-minute soundbite. The problem with Joe Biden is that he's just too smart for all of us, and he was over-prepared. That one didn't work, so now he wasn't prepared enough because he had to rest because he went to Europe. But here's the thing, if I may. If you're excusing your disaster of a debate with Donald Trump to be president of the United States, if your excuse is, I'm sorry, but I had to travel to Europe twice and then come back and then do the debate, and it took a lot out of me. Understand what message the Biden campaign is delivering to the American people. That the president of the United States should not be expected to be able to answer questions about himself, his policies, and his vision for the country if he's coming off the heels of a trip to Europe. They're telling us that the president of the United States cannot actually function properly if he's traveled to Europe twice in a 3-week span. I don't know about you, but I think this is part of the job description. I think a president is supposed to actually represent us, be our head of state, engage in diplomatic meetings all around the world, and still function. In fact, I'm pretty sure that's why we spend so much money on that airplane. So you can do the job of president. And they are literally saying he didn't have a good debate because he had to travel too much and he had too much work to do as president of the United States. The job is too much for him, is what they're telling us. And I think we should listen. One last clip here as a Democrat operative went on CNN and tried to spin around this and make it look like Joe Biden's just fine. He's still tired because of his work schedule. And watch the journalist here, the host from CNN, just, it pains her. It pains her to have to engage in this conversation.
If the president needs to find schedule accommodations to help to facilitate his focus on advancing our country on behalf of next generations, let's find those accommodations. But let's be clear about what's at stake.
But Senator, I mean, with all due respect, look, I love a good nap, but the presidency is a 24/7 job. I think that is alarming to people, that even for debate prep, that is something that President Biden requires?
Is that a question, Abby?
Is it alarming
I
to you? Are you concerned
of,
about? You don't have that concern at all.
Too.
You're not concerned about that at all?
Look, let's look at what the president has done.
The answer might as well have been, dude, he's running against Trump and we can't let him win. So just shut the up. Don't ruin this for us, okay? You're helping Trump out, which is really all that we're seeing right now. This is really all about Donald Trump. And more importantly, as usual, it's about you. They hate the fact that you have a say in who the president should be. And even more so, they hate the fact that you're going to vote for Donald Trump. And so they're willing even to support a cadaver, anyone but Trump. But the cracks are showing and their lies are obvious and none of it's working. And it's been a long time coming. We've been waiting for it, but it is pretty fun to watch. And I want to remind you, the next several days and weeks are going to be historic, what we're witnessing right now. Never happened before. So enjoy it and stick with us as we cover it together. All right, we're starting to really enjoy the performance of Scott Jennings on CNN. He has walked onto that set. He's the only conservative they allow on the set. There's no one else there. And he is rising to the occasion. And yesterday, oh no, it was this morning, excuse me. This morning, he delivered again. Once again, Scott Jennings delivered a truth bomb to CNN, and they don't know how to handle it. Take it away, Scott.
Republicans have to be licking their chops, so to speak, as they're watching this, because they haven't really come out and said anything because they don't have to, right?
Yeah, and Donald Trump, I think, is gone radio silent, which is the best thing he can do. Look, I think the big lie of 2024 is the idea that what happened on Thursday night to Joe Biden is an anomaly or an aberration. There is now credible reporting from Axios, Alex Thompson at Axios, that there's been a 3.5-year cover-up to try to keep Joe Biden away from other people so folks wouldn't see just how bad it is. Last night, the most alarming article I read yesterday was from the New York Times that said his lapses in meetings are getting worse and more frequent. There was a paragraph in that story where senior diplomatic officials in the United States and in Europe said that they weren't sure you could put Joe Biden in the same room as other world leaders right now. Last night, Joe Biden told donors to the Democratic Party that the reason he was bad on Thursday night was because of his foreign travel, a trip that ended 12 days before the debate. What we saw on Thursday night was Joe Biden at his best. 7 days of rest, prep with his top staff. That was Joe Biden at his best. I've honestly stopped worrying about the campaign, and I have one question. Who's running the White House today? Who's making decisions today? I'm not really worried about the presidency in January. I'm worried about it right now. We have serious problems going on right now, and I don't really think Joe Biden is up to the task today, let alone 7 months from today.
Scott, you talked about the concern right now, and I want to just sort of mention what Semaphore is reporting. They're saying, look, Democratic strategist James Carville is saying to donors, look, cut him off. What do you think about that, Maria?
I think it's very concerning. Like I just said, the campaign and the president are at a crossroads right now, and they need to prove to the American people that there will be strength ahead. But I think there's a couple of other things to note, Sarah. I know that right now everyone is breathlessly reporting coming out of the White House because of what's going on. And I think we're missing a really important piece of this, which is Donald Trump. The reporting that Scott is talking about from the New York Times also included some very concerning paragraphs about the slippage in terms of mental acuity of Donald Trump. If we're going to pile on the president, let's also be fair and talk about the mental acuity and the lack of mental fitness that was in the New York Times from Donald Trump in terms of the things that he has said on the stump that make no sense, the incoherencies, the going off on tangents and making no sense, trying to figure out what he's talking about, when he's talking about it, who he's talking about. So let's be fair, right? Both candidates are old, and that is what the American people are facing. Right now, Joe Biden has a lot to prove, but there's no question that whoever ends up being the nominee, and right now it's him until he decides otherwise, we have to wrap around him, the Democratic Party, the Democratic nominee, to make sure that we beat Donald Trump, who is an existential threat to our democracy.
Scott, Maria does make the point that there have been some real rambling rallies that we've heard from Donald Trump. But I do want to ask you about this. When you look at polling and Americans are saying, look, time and again, they don't like their choices for president, should Republicans actually be worried if Democrats decide to put up a different presidential candidate?
It's an interesting question, and truthfully, I don't know. I mean, I see the merits of both sides of keeping Biden and just trying to ride it out versus going to somebody like Kamala Harris, who, by the way, is also dramatically unpopular. I see no way, by the way, that how the Democrats could skip over Kamala Harris. I mean, if they're going to change candidates here, they have to give it to her. She's not going to step aside. They're not going to go from Joe Biden, skip over Harris, and give it to one of these other people. So it's either Biden or Harris. She's got a approval rating right now that's under 40% as well. However, I would point out one thing. When you look at the swing state polling and the polling where you have Senate races going on, the Democratic senators do much better right now on their ballot test than Joe Biden does. It tells me that the Democrats have a unique Biden problem. And this was before the debate. So there is a world where you could conclude we couldn't do any worse with a fresh face. So why not roll the dice on it? It may be that the riskiest thing the Democrats can do is stick with Joe Biden. But as I said, I'm not really as worried about the campaign right now as I am about the state of who's running the country today. And I don't think we're thinking enough and putting enough focus on the day-to-day operations of our government right now. I know we're all political contributors, but we're all Americans. We're all taxpayers, and we all got to live in the country for 7 months. And we have a president right now that I think, according to very credible reporting, is not up to the job of running it.
Scott.
Yeah, he's exactly correct. And I want to reiterate this because, listen, when you just look at this through a political lens, you want Joe Biden to stay right where he is because Donald Trump will win, 40 out of 50 states or more, right? But this is more than just politics, frankly. That's why it's astounding to me that as you see all of these Democrats make their opinions about what's going on with Joe Biden, it's all shot through one specific lens, November. It's about the election. It's not about actually the functioning of our country, which, by the way, tells me that they've known about this and they know that Joe Biden isn't running things anyway. So there's no change there. It's really just about winning the election. And I want to get into the politics of that in just a second about what we should be rooting for, where we should stand on this. They make a very good point here. It's true. Donald Trump, for the first time in a long time, is actually not getting in the way of his political opponent self-destructing. Oftentimes over the last, 8-9 years, when Donald Trump's political opponent is in trouble, Donald Trump then does something or says something to pile on that actually distracts and takes away and suddenly makes the story about Trump. Trump is on radio silence right now. He's letting this all play out, which is incredibly smart, incredibly disciplined, and frankly, a great change and an incredible improvement for him politically. But make no mistake, unlike what our Democrat friend here on CNN just said, this isn't just, when you turn the focus on Donald Trump, well, he's got problems too. And sure, Biden has problems, but no. There is definitely a story to tell about Donald Trump, but it's not that. The story about Donald Trump is he's not just benefiting from Biden's decline in the polls since the debate. Donald Trump had a great debate, and he's actually benefiting with his numbers going up, as they pointed out this morning on CBS.
Growing pressure on President Biden from inside his own party after last week's very poor debate performance. And we now have a new CBS News poll. While the presumptive nominees are functionally tied in our national poll, it shows a shift towards former President Trump. Now, our last poll had President Biden leading very slightly. The president was also in battleground states in the last poll. Now he is behind by 3 points, though that is still within the margin of error. This comes as the White House offers multiple explanations for the president's debate performance.
You notice how she tries to bend over backwards and say, it's still within the margin of error, don't worry. No, that's a big shift. That's a big shift, again, in a national popular poll, which is, number one, not how we elect a president, and number two, something that Republicans usually don't do so well at. And also, by the way, you noticed significantly that Donald Trump is not just leading in that national poll, not from CBS News, YouGov, but he's hit the 50% mark. That's a big deal. Also, what you didn't see was the number that you should be paying attention to, the 5-man race, not the 2-man race. This is not a 2-man election. This is also a Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Jill Stein and Cornel West. That's his name. The Cornel West race. When you do a 5-man race, Trump does even better. State by state, quick look here. Not good. This is a leak, actually, of, we're told, an internal Democrat poll, which usually will skew for the Democrats. Going top to bottom, Colorado, which has been a solid Democrat state for, 6 election cycles, I think. Pre-debate margin, Biden was winning by 3.7%. Now it's 1.9%. Minnesota, pre-debate margin 2.4, now 0.4. Maine, 2.2. Now it's dead even. New Mexico, pre-debate, Biden was only winning by 1 point now. Now he's down by 0.5 point. Same in Virginia. And then you start moving into some of these other states that start to become much more solidly red. New Hampshire, which has gone for the Democrats since, I think, 2000, is now at 2.8% in the Trump column. Wisconsin, plus 4.2. The critical district in Nebraska is a 4.3. Michigan, 6.9 for Trump. Pennsylvania, 7. I mean, this is panic time. Panic time for Biden. It's panic time for Democrats. More polling.
You say he does not have the mental fitness. Look at this. 72% say he does not have the mental fitness in order to be president right now. That's up from 65% pre-debate. But compare that to 4 years ago, the percentage of voters who said that Biden was too old. It was just 36%. That's half the level that we're looking at right now. These numbers are not anywhere close to being the same. 4 years ago, voters, for the most part, thought Joe Biden was with it. He could handle the job as president. You look at those numbers now. The fact is, voters do not even see them on the same planet. They don't think Biden's with it. They do not believe he has the mental fitness to be president. And I have to be honest with you. I don't know how he wins with the numbers that we see right now. There is no precedent for the numbers that we're seeing right now for someone running for president, letting alone getting a nomination. These are the types of numbers, when you combine them with some of the numbers that we're seeing post-debate that show him trailing Donald Trump, these are the types of numbers that could end a campaign if he can't turn them around.
True. It can end the campaign if he can't turn them around, except for 2 critically important questions. Number one, how exactly do you end a campaign when you're in the incumbent president and you're already the presumptive nominee with the convention just 7 weeks away, 6 weeks away? And number 2, who's going to replace you? And that leads us to one other set of polls. If Joe Biden isn't the nominee, well, how does Donald Trump do against the other people that they could put in there? Most specifically, Kamala Harris.
We should note, not only does Harris do better in a head-to-head matchup, than Biden in the new CNN poll. Among women voters, Shermichael, it's Biden gets 44, Trump gets 47. So Trump wins the women's vote against Biden. Harris in a head-to-head gets 50, Trump gets 43. I mean, that is stark.
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually not surprised by this. I mean, I've been observing the vice president's schedule for quite some time now, and I think she is at her best, Jake, when she's talking about reproductive rights. I know a lot of Democrats, and I'm saying this as a conservative, well, Kamala Harris can't win. I'm actually not convinced of that, and I'll tell you why. I'm looking at black women. I'm looking at younger black women. I'm looking at white women of color, and I'm looking at their numbers compared to 2018, 2022. They voted overwhelmingly for Democrats because of this particular issue. I think if you have someone who's younger who can articulate that case, and then you got to figure out a way to deal with the economic issues. You got to figure out a way to deal with the immigration issues if you're a Democrat. But her net positives appear to be better than President Biden. And she also has the youth on her side, which the president does not have. So again, I'm not trying to advise Democrats,
right.
But if I were to consider this, all of the data suggests that the vice president would be a far more formidable candidate than the current president.
Yeah, so Democrats are not just looking at the polls about how Biden does. They're also scrutinizing the polls about how Kamala Harris does, because I think that's their only choice. Legally, logistically, financially, and politically. You just can't bypass her. There's no way. So the only question the Democrats are faced with right now is who does better against Donald Trump, Joe Biden or Kamala Harris? And, well, all indications point to which leads us to the last part of our conversation today, which is, what are we supposed to make of this? We Republicans, we conservatives, we voters who want to change and want to get the Democrats out of the White House, we American patriots who actually want to do what's best for our country. Because again, that's not a topic that you hear anywhere in these conversations, from the media to politicians. They only care about beating Donald Trump. They never actually ask themselves what's in the best interest of our nation. The best thing to get the Democrats out of the White House is for Joe Biden to stay exactly where he is. But that means we have to deal with the next 7 months with a completely debilitated, nonsensical, incompetent president. I know we've been doing that for 3.5 years, but it's even worse now. And if you're our enemy, if you're Russia, if you're China, if you're Iran, if you're Hamas, if you're ISIS, and you see what just happened and what continues to happen, well, you're going to try to take advantage of that. And people are going to die. And we're going to be in much worse shape. So for the country, this guy can't stay president. But for politics, you want him to stay. So what do? Well, listen, it is out of our hands. A small number of Democrat power players are going to make this decision for our entire country because, they're all about democracy. And probably they're going to split the baby here. They're going to let Biden play out his presidency so that he doesn't have to suffer the humiliation of resigning the office. And they'll make Kamala Harris the nominee. And people will think that she is a very strong candidate against Donald Trump. I don't think she is. I think the more she's out, the more people get to know Kamala Harris, the more they hate her. And the fact is, she hasn't really been front and center, not too much. And whenever she is front and center, her polls go down. So if they put her out there, let's have it. Remember, the last time she ran in a Democrat primary, she didn't even make it to Iowa. Democrats hated her that much. So go for it. Make her the nominee. And what do we say as Republicans? What's the best weapon to use against her? I think it's pretty simple. There is one job that Joe Biden entrusted with Kamala Harris during the entire Biden administration. There was one thing that Kamala Harris was charged with that she was responsible for: the Biden border crisis. That's right. The biggest disaster of the Biden presidency was border security and immigration policy. And it was Kamala Harris who was the much celebrated border czar. So yeah, she definitely deserves a promotion. You make her answer for border security every single day of the campaign. Make her own what's happened on our border, because it is universally a disaster and at the same time, universally the most important issue for the American people. I think that's a recipe for success. Even with the media going nuts about the first ever Black woman candidate. Blah, blah, blah. Here's the beautiful thing about them doing this. You know who's going to be really angry and bitter about all of it, and probably will even, at the very least, not do anything to help her, but ultimately maybe even do something to sabotage her? You know who she has to look out for? You know who she has to look over her shoulder for if she becomes the nominee? Hillary Clinton. Don't be surprised if Kamala Harris on her official X account puts out a tweet that says something like, for the record, I am very happy, mentally stable, and not contemplating ending my life. I'm not saying, I'm just saying. That's it for today. We're all out of time. But until next time, and by next time I mean Friday, because we're taking Independence Day off. Have a great one. We will see you then. I'm Larry O'Connor. You can call me Larry.